Hello all, I'm Sai and in today's video, I'm bringing to you my answers for the questions inside the book recommendation tag. There are a total of 15 questions in this tag and I'll drop all of them down in the description. And don't forget to leave your answers for the questions in the comments below so that I can know your reading taste. So without any further ado, let's get into the questions right away. Question number 1. A book you tell people is your favorite, okay? I'm going with a YA contemporary for this one, and if you've been following me for quite a while, I'm sure you know what that book is, and it is Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I read this in the Jan of 2022, and this book is something that hit me out of nowhere and made me feel so much at home the whole time I was reading it. I loved the main character, I loved all the side characters, I loved the setup, I liked the writing, and more than anything, it is one book that I have related to the most in my life. And seeing all the following questions also inside the tag, I think this will be the answer for some of the other questions also towards the end. But as of now, this is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. There are also a few others, but I don't want to repeat multiple books for different questions, so I'm going with Radio Silence for this one. Question number 2. A book that is your guilty pleasure. I don't think I have any guilty pleasure book because I'm pretty transparent and straightforward with whatever I read, and I don't try to hide what I'm reading at all at any point. I just go forward and read whatever I want to, and for some reason I don't feel guilt while reading anything that I enjoy at all. So in terms of reading, I don't think I have any guilty pleasures. Question number 3. A book everyone loved but you didn't, and this one is a very popular book, and I have talked about my dislike for this book in detail in a review. I'll try to link it down in the description. And the book is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I know that this book is super popular out there, and some of my most favorite booktubers also just love this book, but for some reason it did not connect with me at all. I'm basically a very character-driven reader, and in this book it felt like the characters were not necessary at all. It was just about the circus and the environment in which the circus was happening. The ambience and the world building of this was just great. The writing of the author was out of the world. She just built the circus in the perfect way for me to experience it while I was reading it. I could just experience the circus. I could taste all the things that were being sold there. I was easily able to see in my mind whatever was happening inside the circus. But the characters did not connect with me at any point, and that just made me feel distant from the story throughout. And because of that, I did not like this book at all, even though so many more people like it. Question number 4. A book you read the fastest. For this one, I'm going with a very recent read of mine, and it is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. This is actually one book which I did not expect to finish that quick, okay? I read this book in 2 days, and both of those days I was working full time. So I'll just complete my work and I'll start reading and I'll just binge through the book. I have a dedicated review/discussion of this book with one of my friends on Booktube already out in the channel. I'll link it down in the description. Do check it out if you're interested. It's a very long discussion and we discuss a lot of spoilers for this book, especially in that video. And it was such a great experience and fun experience for me reading that book. It's also my first read from this author and I was astonished by how addicting it was as an experience for me reading that book. I basically finished it in just 2 days. In the first sitting, I read like a couple of chapters, and in the second sitting, I just read the rest of the book as a whole. So this is easily one book which I read the fastest very recently. Question number 5. A book that deserves more hype. For this one, I'm going with a self-help book, and it is a psychology book, which is How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole Lepera. I read this for the first time in the July of 2021. And this is the only non-fiction book that I felt related to the most because it gave me a lot of answers for the questions that I had in my own head, and it made me understand myself better. Despite being such an amazing book, I don't see so many people talking about it at all, even when it comes to the self-help/non-fiction side of Booktube as a whole. I read both fiction as well as non-fiction, more of fiction generally, but when it comes to non-fiction books, there are some books which are just really good and are not being read enough by people out there. And I think personally that this book can change the lives of a lot of people because it did help me change mine. It is one book which will make you feel understood and empathetic, and it will definitely help you change yourself for the better. Question number 6. A book that is becoming a movie or a TV show. For this one, I'm going with Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, and I've been hearing that this series is coming on Netflix for the past 2 years at least, and ever since I finished reading the book, I want to watch this as an adaptation because I think Netflix can do a great job of showing this as a particular show or a movie, but I think a series can work on a greater level, especially for this book since we have a lot of characters. It is definitely such a heartwarming book and it'll just switch your perspective and understanding in many ways, and the moral grayness of this book made me feel awestruck just as much as it was heartwarming. I just can't wait to watch the Netflix adaptation for this one. And as I said before, Radio Silence is also in talks for an adaptation in Netflix. I think after Heartstopper finishes, I definitely want to watch that too. So I can say one that is definitely becoming an adaptation is Anxious People, and one I want to watch is Radio Silence. Question number 7. A book you have reread the most. Okay, for this question, I went back and searched my Goodreads for the past 3 years. That is starting in 2023 until 2021. And I was a bit astonished to see the result. And the book that I've read 3 times in these past 3 years is All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first book inside the Murderbot Novellas series. And the funny fact is that I have read the first book 3 times until now, but I have not proceeded on with the series at all in any way. I did like the first book, but for some reason I don't feel the urge to continue on with the series, even though I like the main character in this one, that is the Murderbot, very much. It is basically just a socially anxious robot, and that's more than enough for me to get lashed onto and read the entire series, but for some reason I have not read it yet. So considering the past 3 years, I want to say that this is the book that I've reread the most. Question number 8. A book from a genre you don't typically read, and for this one I'm going with the genre of thriller. I don't read that many thrillers, but when it comes to reading thrillers also, I'm much more interested in reading psychological thrillers because they feel a bit more interesting for me to read as a whole. And the book that I read last year is Playing Nice by J.P. Delaney as an audiobook again, and this was just excellent. Okay, the basic premise of this book is we have 2 couples, and both of these couples' babies have been swapped accidentally in the hospital due to some reasons, and without knowing this, for the past 2.5 to 3 years, both these couples have been bringing up the child of the other couple. And because of some reasons, one of the couples gets to know that the babies have been swapped, and when they bring this to the knowledge of the other couple, a lot of things start unfolding. It is such a twisted plot, and the way in which the author just makes us feel for these characters is just extreme. None of these characters is completely good and none of them is completely bad also. At the same time, we can easily see how much difficult it is to be a parent, and the question of which is more important, nature or nurture, also comes into play here. It was a thriller which made me think a lot, at the same time continuously flip the pages. So this is definitely one thing which I don't usually read but want to recommend a lot. Question number 9. A book that deserves all the hype it gets. Okay, for this one, I'm going with a book who's actually a queen. Okay, and the book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was my first book from this author, and I've read 4 books by the author so far, of which only 1 has been a miss for me. I've loved all the other 3. And this is one book which I've been wanting to reread so badly also for the past 3 years. I have the physical copy with me, but for some reason, I don't get enough time to go forward and reread that book and experience the story of Evelyn Hugo all over again. This is definitely one book which needs to be read by millions and millions of people out there, and it needs to be kept on that bestseller list forever if you ask me. This main character, Evelyn Hugo, is definitely one of my all-time favorite characters, and this book is also one of my all-time favorite reads ever. I made my brother read this one last year, and he has also loved it so much. He also wants to watch an adaptation of this one just like I am. And I hope that it happens someday because this book needs an adaptation because it deserves one. And more than the book, Evelyn Hugo herself deserves an adaptation. So this is definitely one book that deserves all the hype that it gets. Question number 10. A book you usually recommend when asked to give a recommendation. And for this one, I'm going with real life recommendations, okay? I know that people on my channel frequently ask me for book recommendations, but when it comes to my real life, it is people whom I deal with on a daily basis, like my colleagues, neighbors, friends, etc. Those are people who ask me recommendations for non-fiction books in specific. And there is this one book which I keep on recommending to people no matter what happens. And that book is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. It is one of those first books which made me think more about my mind and my brain as a whole and helped me change certain thought patterns in order to make my life better on my own without depending on anyone else. It's definitely a classic self-help book, and I agreed with only 80% of the book when I read it for the first time 3 years back. And now when I look back, I am able to understand and make sense of the rest of the 20% that I did not agree with back then now. I think I need to reread this book because I'll be able to dig out a lot more great stuff out of it and put into practice in my daily life. But it is easily one book which I recommend a lot when people come and ask me for book recommendations. Question number 11. A book that has your favorite character or characters. For this one, I'm going with a series, and it is the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. I like all the characters inside the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles itself, but compared to all the other characters in all the 90 to 20 books in the series out so far, my most favorite are the OG6 characters from the Mortal Instruments series, and the order in which I like them is Magnus Bane, Simon Lewis, Isabel Lightwood, Alec Lightwood, Jace Valen, and Clary Frey. I like all these 6 characters. In the beginning, I did not like a few, but as I kept on reading the books, and progressed on with the other series inside the entire Shadowhunter world, I have developed a love for these characters so deep that I cannot give that up at all. For some reason, they are so close to my heart, and they are the only reason why I keep on reading the series, and I'll also keep on reading the series as long as Cassie Clare writes inside the Shadowhunter world. So it's easily the Mortal Instruments characters. Question number 12. A book you wish you could live in. Okay, for this one, again, I'm going with Radio Silence. It is easily one of my top 3 favorite books ever. Okay, I love each and everything about that book. There's not even one thing that I will change about it ever at all. And the first thing that I thought after finishing that book is that how good it would be to live inside this world and live with these characters and have them as friends surrounding me. It made me feel to such a great and intense extent just after the first time I finished reading it, and I want to keep on feeling it, so it'd be great to live in that world. I do love the Mortal Instruments characters, but I don't want to live inside the Shadow world because it is not that great. But the Ostman verse is just amazing. Okay, I want to live in the world of Radio Silence. I want to meet all the main characters, Francis, Aled, Nick and Charlie, Angel, Georgia, Tori, and everyone else. So Radio Silence is easily one book which I'd love to live in. Question number 13. A book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. I would not say hate, okay, but I thought that I will not like this book because it was super overhyped in the past 2 years at the point when I read it, and it is Truly Genius by Maureen Johnson, okay. This is a YA mystery book, and trust me, the experience of reading this book was out of the world for me. I read it during the beginning of monsoon 2 years back, and it just gave me all the perfect feels that I want for a monsoon read. And ever since I finished reading it, I have been recommending it continuously in my channel. I also have a review for this one. I'll try to link that also down in the description. And if I have reviews of specific videos for any of the books that I'm talking about in this video, all of them will be linked down. This was just amazing, and I hope that the author keeps on writing even more and more novels inside this world or inside the series having this main character. So it's easily something which I thought I would not like but ended up loving. Question number 14. A book that made you cry. Okay, for this one also I'm going with a very recent read of mine, and it is The Tattooist of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. Now, this is one book that I chose as a pick for my book club. I knew that it was a sad book, but I did not expect it to be this sad in any way at all. It is sad with the fact that it is also hopeful and positive in its tone. It shows all the horrible acts done by the Nazis during that time in the concentration camps. At the same time, it does not forget to show this beautiful love story between Lali and Rita while talking about all those horrendous truths. There are multiple scenes inside this book which just triggered me for some reason and made my eyes well. So it's definitely one book which made me cry. And finally, for question number 15, we have a book that you wish you could read for the first time. And for this one, I'm going with Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which is a YA high fantasy book. And it is definitely one of the most beautifully written books that I've read so far in my life. If you've read Strange the Dreamer, you know how beautiful it is, how deep it is, how intricate it is, and the way in which the author has explored the themes that she has taken here is just out of the world. I wish I could read both the books, Strange the Dreamer as well as Muse of Nightmares, for the first time again, because both of them are just as equally beautiful and just as equally well done by the author. If you don't care for beautiful prose, or if you don't like flowery writing, this will definitely not be a series for you. But if you enjoy beautiful prose, if you like to see the beauty in words, trust me, this is a great duology to just put your teeth in and read. I finished reading the duology last year, and I have vivid memories of it in my mind, frequently popping up here and there. So this is definitely one thing which I'd love to read again for the first time. So yes guys, those are all my answers for the questions inside the book recommendation tab. And I've linked the original video down in the description. Do go forward and check out that video because it was really nice. And don't forget to leave your answers for the questions in the comments below because I'd like to know them. And if you did enjoy watching today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also share it to your friends. And if you want to get more content from me, do subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.